Hello glam babes, welcome back to my channel, Nails by A. Today, if you haven't guessed by the description of this video and the beginning of this video, we are going to be doing a set of Grinch nails. It is almost Christmas, it is the holiday season, it is winter, so I am super excited to do this set. I am really impressed with how well these nails turned out. Of course, because I know how creative and how developed my art skills are, I knew these nails were going to turn out good, but I truly am impressed with myself with how well and how much like the actual Grinch and Max they turned out to be. So as you can see here, I am making a custom color. All the colors I am using are on the screen, but everything as usual that I use in the video will be linked down in the description below. Without any further ado, let's get into this video. So I am starting off with the Grinch's head. Now, when I do freehand nail art, I normally do not go in with a pencil and draw it first. I usually just go right in with the polish, but I try to give myself some type of guide. So I kind of make a T here to mark where the top of my head is going to be and where the bottom of the head is going to end. That way I can kind of get my proportions and kind of get a guide of how big I want the face to be. So I am going to create his head, fill it in. I'm going to add some details, some shadowing, all that good stuff to kind of bring the Grinch to life. When doing freehand nail art, when creating cartoon nail art, anything that really has detail, whether it's people, cartoons, faces, animals, you'd be surprised how adding things like shadows and little details, how much they make a big difference. So keep in mind when you're doing nail art, pay attention to the small details because that's the type of thing that is really going to make your artwork pop. Throughout this video, I will try to point out little tips and tricks that I use when doing freehand nail art or nail art in general. I am fairly new to doing nail art. I've been doing nails now for about a year, but I am still learning a lot myself. So I don't really have a flow or a rhythm going yet. I am still trying to figure that out as I'm doing nail art, but I am finishing the base of the hat and the coat that the Grinch will be wearing. And then I'm going to go in with some shadows and create the face, the eyes, try to get some shadows on the face, and we'll see where it goes from there. Getting back to tips and tricks here for a moment, my first tip was to pay attention to detail. As I said, this will help your artwork pop. My second tip for freehand nail art is to keep your layers thin. I do want to say that 9 times out of 10, one layer for the base of your design, as I did with the Grinch's head and as I'm doing with the hat and the Santa coat that the Grinch will be wearing, is sufficient. Even if you have some spots that are less opaque where you see some of your base color showing through, once you add your shadowing and your designs, all that little detail we talked about, most likely you will not see those spots showing through. And this will also help keep that nail thin. Keeping your layers thin will help prevent the nail from getting bulky, misshapen, and will help keep your design flush to the nail, keeping the design looking crisp and clean. This is a very important tip and trick to get your nail art looking nice and fresh. Now that I have the base to my Grinch, I am going to start adding in some of the shadows. I'm going to add shadows to the hat, to the coat. I am going to add shadows in the white of the fluff to the hat and the coat. And I am also going to start adding shadows to the Grinch's face, mostly under his hat where the hat would cast the shadow on his forehead and also around one side of his face. This is going to add dimension, which brings me to tip number 3, adding dimension. Adding dimension to your art is another thing that is going to help bring your artwork to life, make it pop from the nail, and just make it look that much better. You'd be surprised how much of a difference adding dimension can make. Since my dimension is shadowing, that brings me to tip number 4, which is blending. I am blending these shadows in with a base coat. Base coat really helps blend in the colors on top of another color that is already cured, and it blends it very effortlessly and very smoothly. As you'll see in the end result, pay attention to the blending. You can see how well the shadow blends in to the face. Using base coat opposed to say a top coat will also help keep that inhibition layer to help keep the colors I put on top of it or products I put on top of it sticking together so nothing peels or breaks apart. Now I do this one of two ways. I either line my shadow with the color that I am choosing and then I go back with a bit of base coat and blend it out into the color underneath, or I mix a tiny bit of the color that I want to use for the shadowing in with the base coat and I put my shadow on that way. I guess it all just depends on the colors I'm using, the product I'm using, how it's blending, and I just go from there and decide what I think will work best. Now we are getting into the face. This part was super hard. It did take me a couple tries to do. For the sake of the length of this video, I tried to cut out any unnecessary footage to help try to keep this video at a reasonable length. This definitely was a fun set to do. This set in all took me 8.5 hours. That's how much footage I have of doing this set. Now, granted, I did step away while the camera was still rolling a few times to either let my dog out or attend to my kids, but I would say at the most I would cut out an hour of that footage, and that's being generous. So we'll say between 7 and 8 hours of work I put into this set, and I will say it definitely did pay off. I cannot wait for you guys to get to the end of this video and see the final result. So since I am talking about the mistakes I made while doing the face, my fifth tip is going to be do not worry about perfection. Now, since I am doing something that somebody has already created, something that already has a specific look to it, I do want to keep it as close to that look as possible. But with that being said, imperfection is what makes the art yours. Deviations from that original piece is what's going to give your artwork its own personality. For instance, this Grinch nail I made here. I made this Grinch nail before I am doing the set that I am currently working on now, and I decided to add a little glitter and glam to that one. Although it does look like the Grinch, I kind of made it my own by giving it a little bit of my sparkle touch to it. So getting back to the detail, I am just finishing up the Grinch with a little bit of wrinkles, a little bit of the crevices in his face, popping in the eyes, and then we will move on to the next nail. We are going to top the Grinch with a matte top coat because I just love the way cartoon nail art looks matte. Here is the finished nail of the Grinch. Let me know down in the comments what you like, what you don't like, what you think I can improve or change, and we will move on to the next nail. Alright, here we are starting the second nail. For these next two nails, I am just going to go ahead and put on the base coat and then matte them. And I am going to be doing the Grinch's itty bitty little heart with some lights wrapped all around it. We are going to start off drawing his little heart, and then I am going to add a little bit of glitter to make it pop, and then we will go ahead and proceed to the lights. To make the lights, I am going to go in with a very thin layer of blooming gel. I am making a thin layer because I have a lot of little dots to make and I do not want them to spread out too much. What I want to bloom is basically just the backlight or the glow of the light. so I want to make sure it is not too large, it doesn't spread too far, and I can get a few dots in before I have to cure. I am going to go ahead and do 2 colors at a time, and then I will go ahead and add another very thin layer of blooming gel and do the other 2 colors. I am going around the heart, that way I don't add an extra layer over the heart. This will also kind of even the nail out, and then once that's all done, I will go ahead and make sure I cure it. So since I am using blooming gel, my next tip number 6, will be make sure you cure your blooming gel completely. After I cured the blooming gel, I did start out a light, and I started out with a dotting tool just to see how it would turn out. I then didn't like it, so I wiped it to start over, and I don't know if I didn't cure it enough or if I just shouldn't have wiped it at all, but it did kind of dim down the glow I wanted to have behind the light. So that is just a little tip and trick for using blooming gel. Make sure it is cured completely or do not wipe it at all. To finish off this nail, we are going to surround the heart with a matte top coat, and then we are going to go over the heart with a glossy top coat. Although I had a different design in mind for this nail, I really wanted to make the heart growing with that little instrument around it, measuring it. But when I first tried it out, it just wasn't going as expected, so I figured I would just put some lights surrounding the Grinch's heart. So this is the final finished look for this nail. Let me know down below what you guys think. Before we get started on the last free-handed nail, I am going to go ahead really quick and polish the thumb and the pinky. For these 2 nails, I am just doing a simple Christmassy Santa red, and then I am going to go ahead and top it with a gorgeous glittery red. These 2 nails will be topped with a glossy top coat to tie in the light nail that has a matte background and a glossy heart. Last but definitely not least, we are doing our last free-handed nail. This is on the pointer finger, and this nail is obviously going to be Max. I am super excited to do this nail, and I am again starting his head off with that T to kind of give me a guide of how big I want the head to be. I am then going to go ahead and add the curves, the shape, and fill it in, and then we will go ahead and get to some of the shadowing and the details. Since I didn't mention this before, well, I am giving myself a guide for Max. Tip number 7 would be to give yourself a guide. Giving yourself a guide, as you can see, can help with proportions and also help with the shape of what you are creating. When giving myself a guide, as I've done with the Grinch and as I'm doing now with Max, I normally just go in with the polish and give myself that guide and an outline to kind of fulfill my shape, but I also am not opposed and have also before went in with a pencil to kind of draw the shape that I wanted to create, and this may work better for some as well. Here we are starting Max's face. Just like with the Grinch, we are going to go ahead and draw his mouth, add some shadowing, then we'll move on to the eyes, the nose, and then again with some accent shadows and creases to bring his face to life. Aside from the face, we can't forget to add some shadowing and dimension to the ears to make it look more lively and keep it from looking flat. Now, Max wouldn't be Max, of course, without his reindeer antlers. I think this is such a great touch to his character. I'm not going to lie. This took me like 3 different tries, I think. I drew 3 different antlers before I finally drew one that I liked and that fit his head and just totally completed the piece. After I finally had a shape down that I liked, I then went in and added some shadowing and also a little extra defined lines to help make that shadowing pop. And then of course, had to add the string and the little bow that ties it to his head. With more than Max's antlers taking me more than a few tries, my 8th tip is patience. Patience is key when doing freehand nail art especially, but really when you're doing nail art in general. Freehand nail art just takes a little more patience because you are doing everything free-handed. There is no set guides unless you create them like I mentioned earlier in this video, but it definitely requires a lot of patience. If you can't get it right the first time, if you can't get it right the second time, take a break, take a breather, clear your mind, and then restart. To finish this little guy off, we are going to add a bow and his body underneath. I'm then going to, of course, add some shadowing and a little detail to finish this look off.
Grinch, you're a bad banana. Mr. Grinch, with the greasy black peel. You're a wild one. You got termites in your smile. You have all the bittersweetness of the sea some crocodile. Mr. Grinch, you're a foul one. Friends you don't have. I wouldn't touch you with a 39 and a half foot pole. You're a monster. Your heart's an empty hole. You got garlic in your soul. You got garlic in your soul. All them smiles, homie, I turn up, frown. All them decorations, I tear them down. You can ask Max, I don't play them round. Ayo. Who is this mean fellow with his skin all green and his teeth all yellow?
Finally, we are done. This is the final result. What do you guys think? I am incredibly in love with this set. I'm so proud of myself for how these nails turned out, and I am so ready to rock them for Christmas. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a big and beautiful thumbs up, glam that subscribe button, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Thank you so much for glamming with me today, and I will see you in the next one.